This is Brent Allan Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. As we said, this is a Common Lawyer comments concerning our common law, our law of the land, and I want to talk about a little more the whole idea of kinsism. If you start discussing kinsism, you say, well, I believe in loving your own kin, and I do. Matter of fact, I know that God made me that way. He made you that way. If you don't love your own, you're a sick SOB. S-O-B, son of Belial, to use the biblical terminology. There's something wrong with it if you don't have natural affection. My father, when he's up 99 now, but when he was in his 80s, he quit working so hard, farming in small town, and fell at the funeral home. The family had been there about 3 generations. Asked Dad, would he help? They needed a man that he was often asked to be a pallbearer. He knew how to be a pallbearer. And they wanted somebody that would instruct the other men that were called in what they needed to do, where they needed to stand. And when they picked up, tell them, now, this is heavier than you think it is. This is dead weight and things like that. Dad carried his first dead weight. He told me the story during World War II. Yeah, I don't want to forget about that. He wound up as a teenage kid in a lot of places, ending up in Okinawa. Okinawa was a nasty situation. The bloodiest battle in the history of mankind, some people say. More lead and steel in the air at any given moment than any time in the history of mankind. Kamikazes were utilized there in devastating effect. And after the hospital ship, I forget the name of it, there's a hospital ship there, a famous one that the kamikazes had hit, did some awful damage, and he was detailed to go help take the dead off the ship. They'd put them on these stretchers that had the chicken wire on them, and 2 men held them on either side, 4 men actually. Well, they'd put the remains, sometimes it was in more than one piece, but they'd put the remains on these, and Dad's job when he walked by was to look at the dog tag and read off on it so a fellow there sitting could write it down. And he did. And he looked at the dog tag and he picked it up, and it was in a county pretty close to where he grew up, our home county. And he said, for all the things that had happened up to that time, that hit him harder. And it made him realize, hey, this is serious business. People getting killed. But he described to me what it was like to pick up dead weight. He said he discovered it's different than live weight. Well, he was working there at the funeral home, opening the door for people. Of course, he knew everybody. They, oh, good to see you, Junior. Of course, his dad was gone, my granddad, so now then they called him Fred after that. And he knew everybody. But what he discovered was, and he told me this, after working there a few years, what shocked him was that people didn't even know who their grandparents were. Dad would meet some young man or young woman and say, well, I knew your great-granddad, or I knew your dad, or your granddad. Well, who was it? And they'd tell him, did you know? No, I never knew him. We hadn't been gone that long. I never knew him. He said that was common. What are we losing? We're losing our family affection. That's what we're losing. The ties that bind the world together, that bind our country together, are family ties. Kith and kin. And sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. Now, where I was from, it was hard to tell the difference. Anybody that was older than us, that was nice to us, was aunt and uncle. Not aunt, not where I'm from, aunt. Like the bug. Aunt and uncle, aunt and uncle. But I found out a lot of those folk I called aunt and uncle were shirt-tail cousins down the line. You know, if you're a cousin to somebody, you have a common ancestor someplace, sometimes near, sometimes on up the line, but you got a common ancestor. And where I'm from, most people had a lot of common ancestors, but they didn't know it. And I found out, and I still find out, people I'm related to. Well, people lived around there for 150 years when they first started settling that area. And they end up marrying and remarrying. I have people that are related to me by marriage and by blood. A lot of them I don't even know. Well, we're losing all that. Is there something wrong with being fond of your own kin? Birds of a feather flock together because of their familiarity. You can even look at cattle and goats and other critters like that. They will bunch together according to color. Did you know that? It's not a hard, fast rule. I mean, you put a red Angus in with a black Angus and a Hereford, they'll all buddy up together and hang out together. I was put in places like that in my life on the other side of the world, and I hung out with guys that were different than me, but we're all Americans. But when I got back to the States, I didn't hang out with them anymore. I hung out with the boys that were, well, like they call them white boys. We make the point we're not white. I mean, look at me now. Do I look white? No, I've always got some tone in my skin. I was born blue, they told me, till I got enough hair, and then things evened out, and then I was kind of a ruddy red, and then I got white, and then I run around half naked as a boy, and I get sunburned and get bright red, and then that'd wear off, and that bright red would turn to a brown with a few freckles. And sometimes if I was in the sun all summer farming, I'd just get dark colored. All very weird. And yet they call me white. I'm not. I guess it's better just like Ed Hill says, you're Caucasian. I'm Negro, part German, part Caucasian. But is there anything wrong, again, I ask rhetorically, to loving your own mother? I love my mother. I'd rather be with her as much as I like your mother. And I'm sure she's a great gal, and she's the greatest mother in the world. My mother's the greatest woman in the world, the greatest mother in the world. Save yours, and you want to say yours is, well, we understand that. But the left has taught us to be racist. Let's talk about that next time. This is Brent Allan Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, coming at you from the remote hinterlands of the Wabash River Valley, where the hogs, the frogs, and the dogs keep up a racket all night long. commonlawyer.com.